Hello, it's Bruce Sussman, Director of Content on the SecureWorld team. Great to have you with us, SecureWorld Philadelphia, New York, our first ever virtual version of the conferences, even though these conferences have been happening for a long time. But that's the kind of time we're living in, right? And that actually is a natural transition to the panel that we have right now. We're talking about humanizing cybersecurity in an all virtual world. How do you do it? Thinking about, connecting cybersecurity initiatives with customers and clients and partners, right? Your end users in this remote world. And we're going to tackle and unpack some of the opportunities and challenges around this topic today. Now, as we get started, I want to say thank you to our vendor partners who have made this possible, AccessIT and their partners, Checkpoint, Gigamon, Netskope, and Tenable. So thank you so much for your support of this virtual collaboration, which is what we have right now. Now, to get us started, I'd also like to ask each one of you on the panel to do a brief introduction. So I'm going to come to you first, Mark, and would you introduce yourself with a few bullet points about your background and your organization? And then if you would, give us a level set on what you're thinking around this topic. So let's start with Mark Spencer from AccessIT Group. Welcome to the panel.
Thanks, Bruce. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Spencer. I'm with AccessIT Group. We are a value-added integrator and reseller based in the Mid-Atlantic with offices from the Carolinas up to Boston. We're about 75 folks, about 6 offices, been in business since 2001. All we do is IT security. We're not everything to everybody, but specifically in the cybersecurity realm. We're able to support the vendors that are on the webinar and panel with us today. We also have a practice around vulnerability and risk management, and we actually have a practice dedicated specifically to cloud architecture. Obviously, we're living in a different environment, staying connected virtually, so it's a lot different than it was back in Q1, but I think everyone's adapted and making the best of a situation. I think it's the norm that we're going to be in for the foreseeable future. And I think a lot of folks are both working harder and longer than they ever have, but also adjusting to it and coming to grips with working at home and having satisfaction with the benefits that go along with it. More family time, closer to the house, less commute, and things of that nature. So pluses and minuses, but I think all in all, everyone seems to have adjusted and settled in. So we're making the best of a difficult situation.
Yes, indeed. And that's what we need to do, right? We need to settle in and make the best of it. Very good. Okay, Mark, thank you for that introduction. Now let's go over to Martin Crew from Gigamon. Martin, welcome to the panel.
Hi, Bruce. Nice to be here. Hello to everybody in the audience. And thanks to Mark and AccessIT for inviting us to take part in this event. So my name is Martin Crew. I'm Director of Solutions Marketing at Gigamon. We're a provider of visibility and analytics solutions that help organizations see all the data in their networks, and by doing that, get better performance and better security. And I think this is a very, very interesting topic, and obviously a very, very timely one. One of the things that we all know who've been in the security industry is that consistently one of the weak links in any security chain is the human part of it. So I think focusing on how we actually humanize cybersecurity in all of its aspects is something that is very important for vendors like us and the other panelists to take into account. So great topic. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, great introduction as well. Thank you, Martin, very much. Now let's go to Nathan Wentzler from Tenable. Nathan, welcome to the panel.
Thank you, Bruce. Happy to be here. Good morning to everybody out there as well. My name is Nathan Wentzler. I'm the Chief Security Strategist here at Tenable. For those of you who may not be familiar, we're the proud company behind Nessus, one of the original vulnerability scanning tools, and our vulnerability management platforms have been around for ages and ages. I think if you've been doing fundamentals for your security program, you've probably crossed paths with us at some point in time. I've been involved in the security industry for, over 2 decades now, and I've been really, really fortunate in many ways because I've been both a practitioner in the trenches as well as a consultant for management, and have been in the management role. So I've really had really seen that human side of security and how important it is from all the different angles. And this is a topic very near and dear to my heart in a lot of ways. I think in the last decade or so, I've really kind of focused on the, for lack of a better term, social engineering aspect of it, and how we move that into better management and better leadership strategies. So very, very happy to be here and looking forward to sharing some insight and hearing what everyone else here has to add to the topics, because it's really, in my mind, become the most important thing that we need to deal with at all.
Yeah, very interesting, very interesting. And I agree. That's one of the things I love about panel discussions is the diversity of thought on them. So that's excellent. Thank you very much, Nathan. All right, let's go to Jim Menkovich from Netscope. Jim, welcome to the panel. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization, and then give us a brief level set.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. Happy to be here. My name is Jim Menkovich. I'm a sales engineer at Netscope. I've been an IT security practitioner for 20 years and just recently moved to the supply side of security with Netscope. At Netscope, we really secure the internet, right? We used to be known as a CASB. Everybody knew Netscope as CASB, but really we're a SASE platform. We're able to actually secure your cloud traffic as secure your traffic as you're moving into the cloud. So whether your business is using SaaS applications, IaaS, or just regular web traffic, we secure all that as you're moving over. I think the main thing for me as we're in this new COVID reality and everyone's at home is the fact that people that would have had to do these digital transformation projects where they were just dipping their toes in the cloud, those plans have accelerated at lightning speed. And I think it's a challenge just to try to educate everybody on how we can help them. And I know we'll get this later into the conversation, but really how can we use our tool sets that we have today to help them and really get their workforce up and running?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good point. And actually, that reminds me of a CISO that was speaking at SecureWorld Boston a couple of weeks ago, talking about how COVID-19 gave all these initiatives a big swift kick in the rear to really get adopted like today, this week. So yeah,
absolutely.
Very interesting times. Okay, good point, Jim. Thank you. All right, now let's welcome Eddie Doyle from Checkpoint Software Technologies. Eddie, welcome to the panel.
Thank you so much, Bruce, and fellow panelists. This is great. I must admit, I think the COVID-19 story, with absolute respect and compassion for those who have obviously suffered during this time, it's actually been an amazing success story. I mean, can you imagine, the plague of 1918? Wow, right? Today we have so much communication. Everybody went home and, they had to become mini CISOs overnight, right? Everybody went home, kids came home, all of this stuff came into the living room, Zoom bombing became a thing, and people all of a sudden said, oh yeah, I need to be secure. Now, what this has done as a mind shift globally for our industry in cyber is phenomenal, because you've basically spread the responsibility of of cybersecurity amongst the people, which is what CISOs have always wanted, right? CISOs have been bearing down under the weight of the world. You can imagine Atlas, right, carrying this entire machine of security, always wanting to say, hey, security is everybody's problem. Don't click on that phishing link. But it's a fat cat tripping over a mouse. It's going to be so funny. No more clicking on that stuff. And really, that's what's happened. I think it is absolutely phenomenal. And the companies that win will be the companies that make it the most user-friendly. Right down to the individual button level. It needs to be so obvious for our users. And I think that will likely be a theme of our dialogue today, right? Make it simple. Complexity is the enemy of security. We need tools that are very simple and intuitive to use that my 80-year-old mother could use.
Excellent. That is fantastic. Yes, and there's a lot of 80-year-old moms doing things like ordering groceries on Instacart now and things like that. So yes, it's amazing what technology has enabled, and now we have to secure it. So very good, Eddie. Thank you very much. All right, let's go to our first question now, panelists, and I'm going to pick on, let's see, Mark, if you would kind of tackle this first, and then everybody else, how to chime in the background, and I'll call on you if you want to add on to this. So, how are you connecting with customers in this new digital world, right? In some ways, we're farther apart than we ever have been. So how are we still connecting with customers? So Mark, tell us what you think about this and what your thoughts are.
Sure. So I'm actually in the sales end of the business. I'm the regional sales manager for the PA office. I'm also an account executive. So the big change in my environment is not actually physically going out to see clients. Normally I'd be out on appointments 4 or 5 days a week, 1 or 2 appointments a day. So that's changed drastically. Obviously, everybody still communicates with email, which is given. I think one of the things that's more important now is LinkedIn, making yourself virtually known and having a virtual presence. I've always said from the beginning of the virus that my tagline was stay safe, stay virtual. You have to be more present in the virtual world through LinkedIn or for trade shows or what have you. But I think the biggest difference is actually just picking up the phone, dialing someone and getting someone on the phone and chatting one-on-one. That's the big difference in today's environment. People are more open, I think, to speaking on the phone. They're at home working alone as well. They don't have interaction in their office, walking down the hall, or people coming into their office. So being vocal, picking up the phone, asking people how they're doing. In the beginning, I was just making random phone calls and say, hey, nothing urgent, just checking in. I think that's one of the nicest things you could do as a vendor or a salesperson or a person in general. Check in with the people that you deal with and the people that you care about and pick up the phone and have an in-person conversation. That's the most important thing, I think, in today's environment.
Yeah, very cool. And I like that. Stay safe, stay virtual. That's a good slogan there, Mark. All right, excellent. Martin, I know that you had something you wanted to add. What are you thinking on this?
Yeah, so a couple of the things that we've done, we've been very focused on getting users to talk to each other and using us as an intermediary for that. So we've put a big investment in bringing up a community website, and we've now got something approaching 10,000 people that are actually using that and sharing best practices. So I think this is something that's important. I mean, we're all just going through a learning curve in a very, very rapid fashion. There's no need for us all to do it on our own. So I think using the power of the community to help everybody get through this is very powerful, and it's something that we've put a lot of focus on.
Mm-hmm. Very good, very good. And Eddie, what would you like to add to this?
Well, certainly, I would add, I think, a very crucial point that, don't assume, right? Assume. Remember, assume, we had that old saying, it'll make an ass out of you and me, assume. And what I mean by that is, for all of our customers and users engaging our technology, we need to have compassion, because this is likely the first time people have had to be the CISO of their own living room, right? Of their own family. And I think what we do, we are ones and zeros people. We're technologists. We were drawn to this industry. And so it's somewhat simplified for us because we tend to think in ones and zeros. Most people don't. We're the anomaly, not the majority. The majority think in regular language, right? And so think about the experience a user has when they engage with the technology. I mentioned Zoom bombing at the beginning. It turns out that Zoom bombing was really just people not knowing how to set a password. And so think about that. People want to have passwords. These are classrooms. Teachers want to make sure children are safe, and they don't want some clown jumping on and bombing their session with some obscenities. And so they are motivated to make sure it's secure, and all they had to do was type in a password. But these are teachers. They're smart people. So the reality is, it wasn't that simple for them to figure out which buttons to toggle, how to put passwords in. So in the question, how are you connecting with people? As simply as possible. That's the value I would add to that question, my friend.
Mm-hmm. That's really good, Eddie. And actually, that reminds me of the change that Zoom made right after the fact. They, when they went through their big 90-day cybersecurity upgrade, they added that security was right there, front and center. So you could find it, you could add it and do it very easily. Okay, Nathan, I know you had something you wanted to add.
Yeah, first of all, Eddie, love that comment. I fully agree with that in so many ways. I think it's a really important piece. I would also say for those who are in the sales roles, if you're typically reaching out to a lot of different people in a lot of different ways, and sincerity in this time frame is really critical, right? Be yourself, be real. If you're reaching out to people and just regurgitating the same bullet points and marketing material, you're not going to connect with folks. And right now, people want connection, right? We're all struggling a little bit. We're all having kind of a tough time. They want to know that if they're going to spend that time with you, having a conversation or listening to how you can help, they want to know you're a real person. So, come at them sincere, talk about the weather, talk about your favorite scotch. Try something new that maybe you haven't done before. Give people a platform that isn't necessarily the standard top 5 webinar. Give them a platform where it's a little more conversational. You can be a little bit more real. That's going to let people feel like you get them, you understand the situation better. It's just going to make all of the conversations you have that much more powerful, because people will feel that you relate to them in this time and really understand what they're trying to deal with.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point, Nathan. I mean, I think you're right. We all crave connection right now because a lot of us are missing it. And could you just extrapolate that all the way down to the end user in the way you're talking about security, if you're a security leader?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Bruce. I mean, absolutely. And especially in this time where you've got potentially employees who've never been remote. Entire office buildings have been emptied out and people sent home. And there's a lot of disoriented employees out there who have never had to work virtually. I mean, I think some folks like myself, I travel a ton. This was just normal for me, right? With webinars and whatnot, we're all the rage. But it's not the case for everyone. And so you go from the daily, water cooler conversations and break room lunches with all your coworkers to this kind of isolated point. And, any of us who've been in security know this is a people business, right? We're here to help people get better at this, to educate, to connect in that way. And now it's that much harder. So finding ways to connect with your employees, finding ways to facilitate those conversations. Have a big brown bag lunch where you don't talk about security stuff. Just talk about the goings on and how everybody's doing. You're gonna get people more inclined to listen in these kinds of days, and they'll pay more attention, which is so hard to do. And you have a much better chance of working through your security efforts if you can help people feel like they're still connected to your office, still connected to each other, in whatever way you can manage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good point. Very good point. And there's a lot of flexibility in that, a lot of ways to do that. So that's great. Thank you, Nathan. I really appreciate that. All right, let's go to our next question. What can we do to strengthen relationships with the tools that we have available right now? And Martin, I was wondering if you would be willing to roll out the red carpet on this one and kick it off.
Yeah, I don't know about a red carpet, but let's give it a try. So,
there you go.
I mean, all of us use a huge variety of tools in our lives, regardless of the context. Obviously, today we're talking about security tools. So one of the things that we discovered through a lot of the community work that I referenced earlier on is many of our users, as with many tools, they're probably using 20% of the functionality that's available. So one of the things that we've been very focused on is strengthening the relationships by just getting people to actually understand a lot more about what the tools they've got and what they can do. So a couple of specific things. One is we reached out to a lot of the users in our federal government community and did a webinar for them specifically on how to get the most out of the tools they've got to enable work from home, which, as one of the previous speakers said, is obviously not an environment a lot of federal workers were used to. The other thing that we've done is we've seen a huge number of inquiries from people about upgrading networks, because obviously with things like Zoom, whatever teleconferencing system you're using and collaboration tools, the networks are getting hammered. So never mind the security side of things, just the actual amount of traffic on the networks is growing. A lot of companies are looking to upgrade. A very expensive part of upgrading is upgrading tools. So we've been talking to people about strategies whereby they can upgrade the network without necessarily upgrading all the tools on the network, using some of the capabilities within our products. So really helping people understand the power of what they've got and do more with that, I think, does help them strengthen the relationship they've got with their existing tools and get more out of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great to really leverage what you have already. That's a great point. Thank you, Martin. Yeah, very, very good. Okay. Jim, I think you'd like to add on to this one. What do you have for us?
Well, I think this conversation is about tools and being human. I think one of the things, me in particular, is the fact that I'm a very private person, right? To know me, you have to actually know me. But if you want to really know me and, in a more intimate way, I really had my LinkedIn set up just to have connections and keep up to date on certain pieces of the newsfeed. But now I'm finding I'm using it to reveal a little more of myself, right? A little more personality, little bit of who I am as a human being. And that way you get to connect and know who I am. I'm not just selling a product. I'm just letting you into my world finally. And but maybe on other platforms, I would do that on Facebook or something else with my friends, but not professional, right? The professional network, I left that that gap there, that firewall, so to speak, between my personal life and my professional life. But that wall's coming down now. So when I think about tools, another way to engage with people is just revealing and becoming a little more vulnerable if you're comfortable with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very good point. That's great. Sounds like you're on that journey. So that's excellent. Eddie, what would you like to add to this?
There was a fabulous study by a think tank called ESI Thought Labs, and what they did is they interviewed 1,009 enterprise companies specific to cybersecurity, so all the CISOs and all the cyber people throughout. And there's an interesting stat here. 60% of the respondents said that having strong cybersecurity benefited building customer trust and reinforced reputation for high standards and corporate responsibility. So this is interesting to me. Today, we have an environment in which we've all come home. We are worried about the corporate information, the intellectual property on our home machines. And so that awareness has come, as I said earlier in this panel. And now we can start to think about that awareness by saying, okay, people, we've got you covered. Here are all of the cybersecurity companies that are protecting you and our customers. And I think that customers in the future will start to look at organizations to say, hey, look, if there's 3 different flavors of ice cream and I like all 3 of them, I'm picking the company that has the most cybersecurity. And that might be an interesting position for companies to move forward on today by saying, hey, look, you can trust us because we've got your information, secure from wherever you are to when it reaches us. Just a good thought.
Yeah, that's very good. Very, very good. I like that a lot. That's excellent. Okay, and since you were just speaking, Eddie, maybe I can pick on you for the next question.
Sure.
And it's this: how can we increase efficiencies, right, and keep current clients happy with limited resources? I think one of the things that I've been hearing in discussions with CISOs and other security leaders is that even the security team, I mean, the resources are tightening up a little bit in this current environment, which is understandable.
Okay, so I say good, but bear with me for a moment, because most people, they want more budget, right? You know what it's going to do is it's going to force us to figure out how to be more efficient with fewer tools, and that's a good thing. If you started to notice the trend again, Gartner, Forrester, all of these guys are starting to recommend, look, there's too many vendors in the network. CSO Magazine did a study which claimed most enterprises have between 50 and 70 cyber vendors in their network. Now imagine this, you've got 50 to 70 different vendors. You don't just have one of their devices. For redundancy, you have 2, so that's like 140 devices already. And then you have devices for each office location. There are so many blinking lights that SIMs today just cannot even alert you to what is absolutely critical. And so here's what happens. People put that any rule in, right? Because they're so afraid of a false positive slowing the business down to a crawl. They see all these blinking lights from their SIM. They've got hundreds of technologies. Vendors, to be fair to us, and we do hold some responsibility here, but we can only intimately work with our own products. And of course, we buy and test other people's products, like the colleagues I have on this call today, so we can help our customers integrate them. But the reality is that burden was given to the customer, right, on how to integrate all these different technologies. And there are literally thousands of web pages of data sheets and white papers that customers need to read with these 50 to 70 vendors multiplied by hundreds of devices. So having a smaller budget is going to force you to reduce the number of vendors as we have done in the past. Remember the UTM market. So a while back, and it wasn't that long ago, 10, 12 years ago, we had a URL filterer. We had an AV, we had a firewall, we had an IPS, all individual machines. And we said, this is crazy. This is way too much. UTM. So everybody got thrown into one device. Well, now all of a sudden, cloud came along, and you've got all these different vendors managing all these different pieces. You know what? You could probably, we confidently feel you could get your vendors down to less than 10. We actually think around 4 to 6, because the majority of things you need are not total bleeding edge, right? You can wait for that kind of stuff. And if you can get it down to, one screen is always the big promise by us vendors, but if you can get it down to 2, 3, 4 screens, less blinking lights, you're going to have a safer network, You're going to know which blinking lights to pay attention to, right? The actual threats. And you can move into an architecture of true prevention, not detection, which has always been our mantra at Checkpoint, because detection's too late. A well-crafted piece of malware can own your system within minutes. And so detection, we like to say, is just like having a router, right? You just got a super fast router. You've got to have prevention. It's a bold move, but it's possible if we can simplify. And luckily, an upside to the terrible dilemma we find ourselves in this pandemic is that we are now being forced to reduce those number of vendors. So I say good.
Okay, well, I appreciate the optimism. It is nice to see some optimism, right, at this point in history. Right. Very good. Okay. Nathan, I think that you wanted to chime in on this one. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I'd like to take Eddie's comments just a step further, actually. I mean, I think that companies are really having to reevaluate their vendors and what's gone on. And I think for years, the security industry overall has been caught in this really vicious cycle of just desperately trying to, show value and demonstrate that we're doing something. And of course, the problem is when you do security right, nothing happens, right? No data breaches, no outages, no anything. It's awfully hard to say that you're doing a lot of work when nothing happens. So we get caught in this cycle of every year buying the next shiny object, the next big, great thing, and let's keep buying and buying and buying. And we end up in a position where, to Eddie's point, you've got 60, 70 tools and not really making them effective across the board. But I think as you're reviewing not just your vendors and trying to decide how you might pare down in this environment, the other thing that I've always recommended is revisit your basics, revisit the fundamentals of what you have. We start talking about endpoint security. We start talking about your firewall. Start talking about, to be, a little biased, vulnerability management, that kind of thing. These kinds of tools can deliver way more value to you if you dive into the tool sets more. You get metadata about what assets are out in your environment. You can build your CMDBs. You can have sources of truth. They can do a lot more than just the sort of core function if you make good use of the metadata that they're gathering, the way they integrate with other tools and whatnot. So those fundamental security tools can be hugely powerful. And especially when you're looking for efficiencies, especially when you have those limited budgets, you already have these tools. You've got them. So look into more of how you can leverage the data you already have. That might mean integrations. That might mean a new skill set to learn about how to extract that data, which, hey, we have some downtime. It's a good time to learn some new scripting skills. But it's a really, really great way for people in the security industry to build back some of that ROI for things they already have, rather than just jumping to the next new shiny thing and getting back to that point of having 60, 70 pieces of shelfware.
Right. Right. We don't. Yeah, the shelfware. Exactly. That's good, Nathan. That's a really good perspective. I appreciate that. That's excellent. And Mark, I think that you wanted to chime in. You had something to close us out on this particular question.
Sure. Real quick, I think the most limited resource out there in the IT environment right now is an engineer in a data center. For guys to go and put a box, an appliance in a rack, takes a lot of work, approvals, you got to get in the building, schedule, et cetera. So what I see this is, in terms of efficiencies, it's clearly accelerating the shift to cloud. Doing proof of concepts in the cloud, any solution that can be cloud-based, firewall as a service, any DLP as a service, any of these solutions that the vendors are representing, the shift to the cloud is clearly accelerated through the COVID situation, and it increases the efficiencies overall, and I think it will continue to build over the next several years.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Yeah, that's very good. Very good. Okay. All right. So thank you all for all of those. That's excellent. Now let's go to how do we maintain a human element in our conversations in an increasingly, impersonal or, distant business type of climate. And I think, Eddie, you were going to kick this one off. Will you tackle it for us to start?
Sure, absolutely. And in fact, I've got an interesting story. It's a 10-year-old story, but it's a good story. So, we experiment on ourselves. We're an enterprise company in and of ourselves, right? We've got 5,500 employees, billions in revenue, et cetera. And so we test all our products ourselves. And we do this on purpose. We test without giving much guidance to the users because we're a tech company, so everybody's fairly tech savvy, but we want to have the experience of our customer base, essentially. So this was way back when, 10 years ago, longer actually, about 12 years ago, when I first started with Checkpoint in 2008, I was sending a document that I had typically sent to a third party, one of our resellers. Now, it was a confidential document that was approved to send to this particular reseller. Okay, unbeknownst to me, after several months of having this normal behavior, we instituted a DLP engine. Now, one day, I'm sending this document as normal, but I get a bounce email back, and it's a nicely worded email that basically says, hey, Eddie, you're sending a document that's been flagged as, whatever confidential, whatever category of confidential. Did you mean to do this? Yes, no, and justify. So I clicked yes, and the little justification dialog, yes, no, or cancel, it would say, and a little justification dialog box opened up when I clicked yes. Now, here's what was interesting. I had been on board several months already. And next to the justification dialog box, there was a little link to our corporate policy. And I thought to myself, I'd better read the policy. And I work for a security company, right? And I thought, okay, I better read this policy and make sure I get it. You know what it's like when you're onboarding as a new employee. You're like, yeah, I agree. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Yeah, I know. I'm a sensible guy. I should be fine with this. But because I knew Big Brother was watching, it created a change in behavior with me. It made me think, oh, okay, that's interesting. I'd better be sure. So the first time I got caught, as it were, by the DLP, it took me an extra couple of minutes because I had to read the policy. Moving forward, I didn't need to read the policy. I was sure. So in the justification dialog box, I simply wrote, going to a trusted third party, normal business practice, send. And so the email was released from quarantine so that the recipient was none the wiser. It was just delayed about a minute that time. In the future, it got delayed maybe a few seconds. There was an audit trail with corporate. And then what was really beautiful about this is it made me interact with corporate through that link into the terms and conditions and then a Q&A table that we had underneath it if I needed it to say, hey, do I need to be sure about this? So the purpose of the story is simply to say that we need to engage people, right? We need to actually ask them. We need to have self-remediation with our tools because the vast majority of people are decent people. And if they know that, hey, Big Brother's watching, they're fine with that. But bad people are not fine with that, right? And so this tool was a beautiful experience for me to go, okay, my corporation, they're engaged, they care, they're watching, they want to make sure I'm safe. The wording around it was beautiful, right? It's not, it was making sure everything is safe. We're protecting you, Eddie, in case there's a mistake. And I was really grateful for that. And it really, it brought a conversation that I've now had for 12 years with various other people on that kind of experience.
Yeah, that's incredible. When you think about that idea that not only was it self-remediation, but you could still get the job done and feel more secure and like you were on the right track. That's beautiful.
And the IT guys would have loved it because there was 0 phone calls to the support desk, right? So that's
exactly
great.
Anything you can do to save those calls or tickets, yes, that's a win, that's definitely. Right. Excellent. Okay, great. Really appreciate that. Let's go to our next question. And since we've been talking about humans, speaking of humans, what are you doing to help your neighbors, family, and friends stay secure during this time? And this is kind of a bigger picture question. But Jim, I thought maybe you could start us off on this. I mean, how do we, as those of us in the know around security, go about this? Making an impact all over the place.
That's a great question. For me personally, it's all about perspective, right? I'm a father, I'm an engineer, I'm a coach, I'm a brother. In relation to that, what technology am I using to engage my family, my friends, my teams, and some people, like you said, are CISOs of their living room. They're also teaching their kids something they didn't have to do before. And how I'm trying to help out is the fact that if you've worked in technology for any period of time and you're a technologist, you have a stack of these old computers sitting around or old laptops that are collecting dust. So I've been working on just getting them up to work so you have the internet. You can do some basic functioning on it. And as part of that conversation of giving people in my family and my neighbors that don't have a laptop an old Mac Mini that I'm handing over. I'm going through the conversation about how you're protecting your passwords, right? Everybody has an account. On average, every person has 130 accounts for the internet and web. 70% of people reuse the same password. So I really go through that conversation. I'm like, do you use the same password everywhere? Let me show an easier way to do this. And let's add multi-factor authentication. So in the helping people out department of getting them a computing device when they may not have had it before, I'm engaging them as part of that conversation. It's working out really well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it's a good way to think about just like as humans, right? Who are we and how can we influence those around us? I love that, Jim. That's very good. Eddie, I think you wanted to weigh in on this.
Well, what we're doing actually as a corporation is we are putting on vlogs or podcasts, right? A filmed podcast, we call them these days, which is just, beautiful kind of generic information. And we're doing it as a company, as a value add. Anybody can dial in. We're not looking to capture contact details and spam people. It's just, you know what? Let's do this at least once a month. Let's have a conversation, something interesting. One time we brought a National Geographic photographer on because trying to draw the crowd, and then just have a little tidbit of information about cybersecurity. And I think every cyber company in the world could pull that off right now. It would be very helpful to our population.
Yeah, it's a really neat idea, actually. I had no idea about that. That's great. Nathan, what do you say on this topic?
Well, I want to say first, I mean, what Jim said is great in terms of really trying to contribute to people, whether that's in your family or friends or whatnot, trying to help them do this better. But I think that, as security practitioners, we need to elevate that to the community at large. The InfoSec group, we're such a small community. We all kind of know each other, and we all move through similar circles. We can talk all day about the job shortages, the skills shortages, and all that. And what it really means is there's only so many of us out there, and we're all up against a lot of work, a lot of trouble, and a lot of demands from our organizations and our communities and our friends and family. And so, I think it's imperative that in this time, especially when pandemic rules apply, if you will, that, we owe it to ourselves to get more involved in the security community. We need to find outlets to share information more broadly. If that means, to Jim's point earlier, being a little more open on LinkedIn and letting people know that you're a real person behind the screen and that you can help them with answer questions or whatnot, or if it's organizing security folks in your community to help with schools or nonprofit groups, whatever the case is. I mean, the options are endless, but we've been a community together for a long time, the InfoSec folks out there. It's time that we take that kind of mindset and really expand it outward, because that's what we have today. We have a much larger community out there in the virtual world that needs us more than ever before. And this is a really good time for us to be capitalizing on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the need is there and the timing is there. That's really good. Way to wrap that up, Nathan. How about Martin? What did you want to say about this?
Yeah, really echo everything that's been said. I mean, I think this whole COVID-19 pandemic has made us realize that we are all interconnected in ways that we really didn't maybe, even if we knew before, we didn't necessarily practice. So our actions didn't align with our words and maybe our thinking. So things we've been doing, a lot of outreach into the local communities, making sure that older people in particular, who are home and isolated and are very reliant on computers, they know the best practices to keep them safe out there. That's one of the things. Another thing we've been doing is just trying to make this a bit more fun. I mean, we're all on Zoom, God knows how many hours a day, but I mean, we know that Zoom fatigue is a real thing. So instead of these huge heads looming out of virtual backgrounds at people, let's try and do things that are fun. So we've been doing sort of virtual cocktail hours, meal planning, prep, home cooking lessons, those type of things, to get people together, get them talking, and not necessarily talking about business and security unless it's something that they want to do. So I think there's a lot we can do, but I think, making it fun, making it simple is the key way to actually, get the knowledge spread as wide as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that idea of bringing fun to it. That's a great concept. Mark, what would you say to add to this?
I agree. Using the Zoom technology for personal use to connect with family and friends. We've done that. We've done the company happy hours But I'll say one thing. I'm proud of AccessIT Group for giving back to the community. Over the last several months, the vendors are unable to use their co-op funding that are typically for in-person events. And we've coordinated with the vendors that are on the call today to make donations back to the community. AccessIT Group, in conjunction with the vendors we've participating today, we've delivered over 2,000 meals to 17 hospitals in 6 states. We've participated in the World Central Kitchen's Chefs for America campaign. We've worked on the Cyber Streets COVID-19 project, and we've also been involved with WellSpan's COVID-19 emergency fund. So reallocating assets to a better use that's timely and giving back to the community. I'm very proud of AccessIT Group and the marketing folks that put this all together for the work that we've done. So that's something I'm pretty proud of.
Yeah, very good. And I can see why you would be proud. And that makes a big impact. That's great, Mark. Thanks for sharing that. And Mark, Martin, Nathan, Jim, and Eddie, thank you guys so much. We're going to leave it there for our panel discussion today. Appreciate all of your thoughts. Great job on all the contributions you made. And thanks again to AccessIT Group, Checkpoint, Gigamon, Netscope, and Tenable for supporting this effort at Digital Collaboration. And I know that all of you have vendor pavilion booths, which I don't know if you've been to the vendor pavilion yet, but you can click in and all of a sudden it looks like you're at, SecureWorld Philly or SecureWorld New York. And so it's really cool. So check it out if you haven't been over there yet. And enjoy the rest of your day here at SecureWorld Philadelphia and New York. Our next round of sessions starts in just a couple of minutes. See you over there.